We are Geeks on Tour. We are geeks, also known as propeller heads. So these funky little hats are kind of our signature. The on tour part is because we travel a lot. For 14 years, we lived full time in an RV and traveled all over the country. And a couple times we were one of the speakers at the Denver Senior Planet when you first opened.
Right, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and then but we travel all over, so we never are in one time zone for all that long, and we need to make sure that we don't miss appointments. And we are teachers. I've been in the computer training business since 1983. I had a computer training center here in Fort Lauderdale and taught things like VisiCalc and WordPerfect.
Chris was one of the first 17 WordPerfect certified instructors in the world, and she was president of the International Computer Trainers Association way back in 1993 too,
something like that. Yeah.
So she knows her stuff, and I'm a real geek, so I speak geek, and she kind of translates it for us so we can understand what's going on. We have a live YouTube show a couple of times a month. We used to do it every week, and we've kind of slowed down now. We've done 223 of these episodes. They're each about an hour long. Has anybody seen any of our shows? Maybe some of you have. Yeah, okay.
All right, good. I saw at least one hand.
Dave, and thanks.
And Stella?
Yeah, it's great. So please join us sometime. If you want to, you can get on our newsletters and that kind of stuff, and find us on Facebook and find us on YouTube, and we do all of those things.
So here's a photo of when we were at Senior Planet in 2019. So is anybody see themselves at that table? Our specialty is really Google Photos. So that's what we taught when we were there live. And that's what we've taught with one of these prior Lunch and Learns. But as I say, Aaron specifically asked that we cover time zones today. All of our content is collected on our website. Just visit geeksontour.com, and most of it is free. Please sign up for our free newsletter to keep in touch and see what all we're doing. But there is some content that is only for premium members, and that's what that Become a Member is. I want to start with a couple of tips on your phone. So can we see a raise of hands? I know not too many people are showing their face. So do you know how to use that reaction button down at the bottom just to do a raise hand? I would like to know how many of you use iPhones. You have an iPhone. Okay. Yeah, okay. I'm seeing more hands now.
Okay.
And some with the icon and some. All right. If you were iPhone, then put your hand down. And if you're Android, put a hand up.
Oh, they all go to the top, so that's
quite a few hands popping up for Android too. So
it's been our general half and half.
Our audience is normally about half and half, which is why when I demonstrate something on the phone, if at all possible, I will demonstrate on both an Android and an iPhone. I have them both and use them all the time. He can testify for that. I usually have one in one pocket and the other in the other pocket so that I understand them. Okay, you can put your hands down if it was just for my question.
If you have a real question, we'll try and get to it in a few.
Neither an iPad. Okay.
Okay.
So an iPad is a big
Apple
iPhone.
Device,
Yeah, an Apple device. So I want to show you how to put a clock on your home screen on your phone that will show you different time zones. This is if you are making appointments in other time zones, or if you have a family member in a faraway place and you want to make sure that you don't call them in the middle of the night. It's nice to have this clock. So here is my iPhone, and I'm talking about this clock here. It has 4 time zones in it: Miami, Los Angeles, Sydney, and Paris. I'm going to remove it and show you how I got it there. So you long press on the screen and tap the minus in order to remove that. That's called a widget. All right, so how do I add a widget? You long press anywhere on the screen until they all start wiggling, and then you tap the plus in the top right corner. And I want the clock. So there's lots of different widgets, but it's the clock that I'm going for. And notice there's just one regular analog clock, and there's 4 dots down here. That means I can swipe over and get different choices. That's the one I want. So I say, add widget. Now I get to identify which time zones I want. You tap on it, and I don't want Cupertino. Actually, that is the same time zone I want, but I like calling it Los Angeles. That's what makes sense to me. Los Angeles. And then instead of Tokyo, I want Miami, my own time zone. And all the major cities in the world are listed here. You just pick the ones you want.
Helps to know how to spell.
And then, do you know how to stop everything wiggling? You just press the home button, or on a newer one, you would swipe up to do the home. Now I have 4 time zone clocks. On the Android, and my Android happens to be a Samsung Note 9, and here is I just have 2, just a dual clock here. And that is, and I will remove it so that I could add it back. Long press and tap on widgets. And once again, it's the clock widget. And I want the dual clock. You touch and hold, you drag it to where you want it, and then you tell it which time zones you want. So I want Miami, and add, and I want Los Angeles. So New York, I want to be Los Angeles. I tap change, tap on Los Angeles, change, and I'm done. I now have 2 times on my Android. Okay, so that's just my first little tip of a tool that will help you deal with different time zones. Yeah, what is the time zone where you are? Now, you say, well, what do you mean? I'm in Denver, it's Mountain Time, or I'm in New York, it's Eastern Time. Well, but what if you're traveling? What if you're traveling? How do you know what the correct time is where you are? If you use a smart device, like a smartphone, then it is getting its time from a local cell tower. So it's going to have the right time. It's so much better to do that instead of an old manual watch. Now, if you have a smart watch, okay, it's getting its time via the internet also. But what about your computer? And this is a Windows computer. So in the lower right hand corner, mine says 1:46 p.m. And I am forever looking at that time to know what time it is, because I'm sitting in front of my computer all the time, right? So if I flew today to Denver, then my watch or my phone would be telling me Denver time, but my computer will probably still be on Eastern time. So how do you change that? You right click right where the time of day shows. You right click and adjust date and time. But then don't change the time. This is probably my biggest point for this whole session today, is don't try to do it yourself. Don't change the time. Change the time zone and let the system change the times. So time zone, and I need to find Denver Mountain Time. And there are a lot of them, but there we go. Mountain Time, UTC -7, and we'll talk about that later. And when I go back out, it's now reporting to me that it is 11:48 rather than 1:48. So change the time zone. But before I forget, I want to change it back, because I have other demos that will depend on it being correct. So I'm going to adjust date and time, time zone, and go back to Eastern time. Okay. I see we have a couple of questions. What is the use of setting different time zones? How does it work? Well, that's what the whole class is about here today. So just hold on there, Kathleen. Hopefully,
we'll get there.
hopefully by the end you'll understand. Why not just use the automatic time zone adjustment switch? A very good question. And you should use the automatic time. She's talking about on the computer. When I manually changed it from Eastern to Mountain, there is an option. I actually have it checked to say automatically change. But it's just from experience. I mean, we travel a lot. It can sometimes take up to 24 hours for my computer to get the message that we're in another time zone. So I just think it's more usable to just set it myself. If I need to have it set now, I'll set it myself. Okay, so that's what time is it where you are. Use a smart device. Now, what time is it somewhere else? And don't trust yourself. I mean, I figure I'm pretty smart. I should be able to figure this stuff out. You know, if somebody says that they have a meeting at 2 o'clock in Central Time Zone, I should be able to figure out what that means for me, or vice versa. But I invariably mess it up. So here is a tip on using technology to tell you what time it is somewhere else. Converting time zones. We are planning an online meeting for our Geeks on Tour members on this coming Tuesday at 7 p.m. And a lot of people say, well, I never figure that right. When is that my time? So I want to show you a little tip. And all I'm going to do is ask Google. So I'm going to do it first on my Android phone, my Samsung. Hey, Google. Convert 7 p.m. Miami time to Los Angeles.
4 p.m. Sunday in Los Angeles, California.
All right. So it is just converting 7 o'clock today. Now, watch this. Hey, Google.
Hold my beer.
Convert 7 p.m. Miami time to Auckland, New Zealand.
11 a.m. Monday in Auckland, New Zealand.
So it even lets you know not just the time of day, but the day. So it's 7 o'clock tonight would be 11 tomorrow in New Zealand. Okay, so that's Google on an Android phone. Now let's try Siri on an iPhone. Hey Siri, convert 7 p.m. Miami time to Los Angeles.
Okay, I found this on the web for convert 7 p.m. Miami time to Los Angeles. Check it out.
Huh.
Nowhere near as helpful. Let me just try the other one. Hey Siri, convert 7 p.m. Miami time to Auckland, New Zealand.
Okay, I found this on the web for convert 7 p.m. Miami time to Auckland, New Zealand. Check it out.
Well, I guess we could figure it out from there, but I really like the way Google does it a lot better. So if you have an iPhone and you want to use Google, no problem. It's that icon right there. That is the Google search and assistant. So the only thing I can't do is I can't say, hey Google.
Well, you can.
Oh, you can. Convert 7 p.m. Miami to Los Angeles.
4 p.m. Sunday in Los Angeles, California.
Okay. So that is my tip this week, is use your Google search assistant to convert time zones. I know that it's 3 hours difference between the West Coast and the East Coast, but somehow I invariably calculated in my head going the wrong way. So we are in Florida. That's Eastern time. I know there's 3 hours difference, and somebody has asked us to give a presentation online in California, and their meeting is 7 p.m. I guess I just want it to be in my favor. So in my head, I think that's, 4 p.m., great, no problem. So I've had to come up with this little phrase. This helps me. I don't know if it'll help anybody else, but West is less. So whenever I say, well, somebody's meeting is 7 p.m. in California, what time is that here? It's 3 hours. West is less. So that means it's greater here, 10 o'clock. I don't want to do a seminar at 10 o'clock. All right, so West is less as you deal with time zones. There's 2 parts to time zones. You know, this is what you have to get your head around. There's the time, and then there's the location. So smart devices can use both. They create the time based on Greenwich Mean Time, also known as UTC, Universal Time Coordinates. And then your location gives a plus or minus a number of hours from Greenwich, and they calculate the time based on where you are. If you're interested, later, this slideshow will be available on our website, and you can go to that link to a YouTube video that goes through the history of why it was trains that necessitated coming up with time zones. Yeah, so now if you're going to schedule in a calendar, and I use Google Calendar. I hope a lot of you use Google Calendar, and you need to schedule appointments. You need to take into account the time zone. And it really makes it quite easy once you get it. So here's a video on that. Hi, this is Chris Guld with Geeks On Tour. Have you ever missed an appointment because you put it on your calendar and failed to properly account for the different time zone that this appointment was in? I'm going to show you using Google Calendar how to properly adjust for time zones. First, I want to show you what the problem is. So here I am in my Google Calendar, and I'm going to set an appointment for happy hour. And that means 5 o'clock, right? So I just click on Add Time, and 5 o'clock, and save. So I now have an appointment on my calendar for today at 5 o'clock for happy hour. But I'm going to show you what this looks like on my phone. So here's my phone, and I use Google Calendar on my phone. I open it up, and it says I have an appointment today for happy hour at 4 o'clock. So what's the problem here? Well, my phone is a smartphone, and it knows that I am in Texas, which is Central Time. My computer still thinks that I'm in Florida. So it set an appointment for 5 o'clock Eastern Time, which is 4 o'clock Central Time. Now, some people might make the mistake that they try to manually fix it. So on the phone, I can edit this and say, no, it's not 4 o'clock, it's 5 o'clock. Okay, and save it. But has that actually solved the problem? Let's go take a look at the computer again. And now the computer says 6 o'clock. So behind the scenes, Google Calendar is taking the time you tell it and automatically adjusting for the time zone. My calendar thinks I'm in Eastern Time Zone, so 5 o'clock in Central is 6 o'clock in Eastern. How do you tell your calendar what time zone you're in? In the settings of the calendar, you can specify the time zone. So I'll say, no, I have moved. Now, there are other ways to get your computer to prompt you to change your time zone, but this is how you specify it in the calendar itself. I am in Central Time Zone. Now, when I go back out, we see that it properly says 5 o'clock. Okay, so now what if we're going to be back home in Florida on the 30th, and I want to set a 5 o'clock happy hour? I click on the 30th, and I give it a title, add a time, and I want to set it for 5 o'clock, but it's important to tell it, since I'm talking about a time zone other than where I am, I want this to be 5 o'clock in the Eastern Time Zone. So you just click where it says time zone, change that to Eastern, and save. Now notice that this happy hour I just scheduled for the 30th says 4 p.m. That's because it's showing me the time for the time zone I am currently in, which is Central. But when I switch the calendar back to Eastern, and I can do that manually now in the settings, and time zone, and Eastern. So when we are back home in Florida, this appointment will appear properly at 5 p.m. So the lesson is, if you're scheduling an appointment that happens in a different time zone from where you are, make sure to put the time in that time zone and specify the time zone. Then Google Calendar handles everything else. My example is using Google Calendar, but it's the same with any computerized calendar. So the Apple Calendar has the time zone setting as well. Okay, I see Judy has a hand up.
Since I learned to do Google Calendar, I've stayed in Nashville. I haven't traveled since then. When I put an event or something in, it shows it in the Central Time Zone, which is where I'm at. But when I go to put this up for the senior planning classes, and I click on, put it on my Google Calendar, it does it in Eastern Time for my calendar. Is there a way that I don't have to every single time go in and change the time to what it is in my time zone?
Well, I would hope that one of the techniques that we're showing today would fix that. So you're sure that your Google Calendar in its settings is set for Central Time Zone. That's where you are, right? Is Central Time Zone.
That I'm putting in myself, I don't have to designate. It just assumes that unless I tell it
Right.
otherwise, that it's Central Time. But we're, apparently when someone else had set, I don't know if it's just with Senior Planet, because I haven't had anything that's come out of another time zone where I'm putting it on other than, things that are here. But I have to manually go in, change the time, change the time zone, every single thing.
Yeah, well, all I can say is I agree completely that you really should not have to do that. And I am going to use the Senior Planet website as an example in a little demo. So maybe we'll come back. Yes, if the website does the right thing, this is a chat from Dave. If the website does the right thing, it will automatically be adjusted. The problem is some web pages do not specify the time zone for the meeting. Then that's up to you. And as I say, I will use the Senior Planet website for an example here in a minute. So the point is that every calendar event has a time zone, whether you entered one or not. It has a time and a time zone. Click. And so let me demo that. I'm going to enter an appointment for 7 p.m. without specifying a time zone. Then I'm going to show you that it has automatically entered a time zone of Eastern. If I then change the calendar's time zone to Mountain, it will adjust. So I'm going to do this on my Windows computer using Google Calendar. So Calendar. And I'm just going to set an appointment for this Friday for dinner with Richard. And I add a time, and I can say 7 o'clock. I am not going to specify a time zone. I click Save. A time zone has been entered. Here's how you see it. So I find that dinner with Richard, and I click the Edit button, and notice that it says 7 o'clock Eastern Time. So how did it get that? It got that because my calendar is set to display Eastern Time. Now, what if I changed the calendar? What if I flew to Denver and I made sure that my calendar was specifying Mountain Time? I do that with the Settings button, the Calendar Settings button, and change the primary time zone to Mountain Time. And I'll talk about the secondary one in a minute. So change time zone to Eastern. No. What did I do? Because it knows that my computer is in Eastern Time Zone. So now dinner with Richard says 5 o'clock. It's displaying it according to the time zone I'm in, but it's recorded, when I tap Edit, it's recorded by the time zone that it was entered. See, it still says 7 p.m. Eastern, even though it's displaying 5 p.m. So it really isn't very complex. It's just knowing that there's a time and a time zone, and they both work together. Now, one more. Let's say, so now I want to enter an event in a different time zone. So let's say I want to watch Rick Steves' travel show on a Zoom call, and it is scheduled for November 22 at 5:30 Pacific time. Now, my calendar, let's make sure that my calendar is in my time, which is Eastern. And I go to Monday, and Rick Steves, Europe. Now, I want to add a time. It is 5:30 Pacific time. So do I want to calculate that in my head and say that that's 8:30 my time? No. I want to actually choose 5:30, but then specify Pacific time. And okay. And it will tell me that that's 8:30 my time. So it's really very smart. It's very smart. Every entry has a time and a time zone. I see a hand up. Ariana? Arena?
I see. I used to work a lot with the calendars. Like from the East Coast to West Coast, and I was able to. I was looking at the screen that you were presenting, and I had like LA to Texas to New York and all that, but I also was able to include international calendars because I work with the Latin American countries. I worked with like Singapore, all these countries like that. Is it possible to have them as you're showing the Los Angeles and all these Florida and all that? Can you also incorporate on your screen the various international calendars and times?
Yes. First of all, when you specify a time zone, that list of time zones is worldwide. I've only been choosing ones in the U.S. so far, but it is worldwide. It's a very, very long list. And then I think maybe what you're asking is Google calls it a world clock. And if you look at my screen right now, it's right over here. See where I have Los Angeles?
That's what I was looking at.
Right, and I have Germany, and I could have Tokyo there, and I will show you how I put that on there. And this is just for reference. This is just for you to know what time is it right now in those other places.
Good, because I was working all this calendaring function was in Microsoft. Okay. This is pretty good for a phone, to incorporate this.
Back to slides. All right, so every calendar has a time zone. For this meeting today, I entered 11:30 Mountain Time, but it shows me 1:30. So, but that always makes me nervous. I'm checking all my tools, I'll ask Google, what time is it in Denver right now? So that I know I'm not missing it. I use all the tools, but the calendar really does a very good job. Next. The Senior Planet website displays the time in your time zone. It's really pretty slick. Whoever built this website made it work well. But yeah, it sounds like it was messing up somebody a little bit. So I just want to show you that. So if I go to Senior Planet and the events, it shows that this event is at 1:30 Eastern Time. I say, but most websites don't go to that length of making it easy for us. They will say 11:30 Mountain Time, and then it's up to your calendar to create it. But 1:30 for this event, 2 o'clock for the next one, 2 o'clock for the next one. What I want to show you now is what if I change my computer's time zone. All these will automatically change. So I go to time, adjust date and time, and instead of Eastern time zone, I will make it Mountain. And when I come back out, I will have to refresh the screen. So I'm going to click this little circular icon up here to refresh the screen. And we should see all these times change. They now say 11:30 Mountain, 12 o'clock Mountain. So that's something to realize. But if you then add that to your calendar, to your Google Calendar, it should do it right. Yeah, it's saying 1:30 Eastern Time. So I'm not sure what the issue was. Yeah, you don't have to manually set anything. Okay. So that's but hopefully that really lands the point of don't try to calculate the time yourself. Just change the time zone and boom, it changes all of the times, not just one. So, and I'll still get messed up. You still don't trust the time calculation? You know, maybe you don't travel very often and you just don't trust yourself. Did you enter it correctly with the correct time zone? Or did you enter it in your time zone when really you're going to be in London? When in doubt, spell it out. Use the description of your calendar event to actually write in, this is 6 o'clock Gillette time or 7 p.m. London time or something, just so that you know you entered it right or not. So here is those calendar setting, the world clock. Let me show you how you get that world clock. And then there's also this setting on a Google Calendar called secondary time zone. Back to the computer. And world clock is this piece over here that I'm talking about. That it's just for reference. You know, you just like those clocks on the phone that I showed you, you can add over here settings, and world clock. And I don't know how many you can add, but you can have quite a few. So let's say I want Japan. It would be this way. Maldives. We're going to the Maldives next year, so.
You should put that on there.
Okay, so maybe I want Maldives time, because who knows where Maldives is in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Who knows what time it is there, but Google Calendar does. Looks like it's not that far off from, but it's tomorrow or yesterday. No, it's in the middle of the night. There you go. It's 12:18 a.m. So that's world clock. Now, alternate time zone, secondary time zone, is if you are in a day view. If you're in the day view, then over here on the left, I see two different times. So for the Senior Planet, this class that we're doing right here, it's 12 o'clock in Mountain Time, and it is 2 p.m. in Eastern Time. And it doesn't tell you Mountain or Eastern, it tells you this GMT -7 and GMT -5, but that's what they are. So, and you can only have two of those. But for going into day view and making sure that you get it right, it's another point of reference. Okay. I think we're just about done. So how does Google Calendar do it, or how does any calendar do it? Well, under the hood, when you, if you're in New York and you make an appointment for 5 p.m., Google Calendar isn't actually storing 5 p.m. It's storing the GMT. It's storing the Greenwich Mean Time, also known as Universal Time Coordinates, as 9. So it's entering the time in Greenwich, UK. It's entering your time zone, which is New York, or GMT -4. Therefore, it displays to you 5 o'clock. So that's how it works. It's actually not entering the time that you put in. It's entering Greenwich Mean Time. So in summary, how to enter calendar events for a different time zone. Use the local time for where the event is happening. Don't try to calculate it to your time. Specify the time zone where the event is happening. I think there. Let the calendar software do the work for you. It will display the times according to the time zone you're in, or the time zone that the calendar thinks you're in, according to its settings.
It's for you. Did you learn something? All right. You are in time zone A. You are entering a calendar event that is happening in time zone B. What time do you enter? A, calculate the time for zone A, or B, enter the time for time zone B and select that time zone.
B. Do not try to calculate it yourself. Let the software do the work.
True or false? Every calendar time entry has a time zone, whether you see it or not.
True. That's because that's what time is. It's Greenwich Mean Time plus the time zone.
How do you see the time zone for any calendar entry?
Well, that's referring to Google Calendar, and if you edit, if you go into edit, you will see the time zone that was entered for that meeting.
Okay, times are displayed for the time zone set for the calendar. How do you see the time zone for the calendar?
It's in the gear right on the calendar. Settings for the calendar.
True or false? GMT and UTC are both standard times for calculating times in different zones.
True. True. UTC is supposed to be a little bit more accurate. It's the technical rather than being a place, but it's the same. And Diana says she may actually start using calendar. Yeah, it's. And you know, if you use the calendar on your software, either your phones or your computer, it will, especially on the phones, it will remind you of an up. I have loved that. There have been appointments I know I would have missed, but for the fact that my phone beeped at me. Oh, I do. Let me show them one more thing.
Okay.
Just the idea that what I just did on the Google Calendar using the computer shows up on my phone. So if I need to know when we're supposed to go to dinner with Richard, I don't have to be at my computer. And I can have my iPhone or my Android phone. This is my iPhone, and I just want to show you that I do have the Google Calendar. You know, I don't use the calendar that came with the iPhone. I install the Google Calendar so that all of my devices have the same information. And I can find I just tapped on the little calendar there to go back to today, and I'll see that dinner.
You're in October.
I'm in October. Oops. Okay. Let me go back to month view. There we go. And I should see dinner with Richard, even though I entered that on the computer, I entered it in Google Calendar. So it appears on my iPhone and on my Android phone and on my computer. And it will give me a reminder on my Apple Watch.
Okay.